I want to thank Nintendo UK for sending me this game to review. Last December, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 launched on the Switch and sold impressive numbers, making it the best-selling game in the series. And with Nintendo's big focus recently on DLC and post-game content, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 having a season pass was not a surprise. Most of the content was new blades and missions for the main campaign, but topping it all off was an entirely new story mode, and many never expected it to be quite like this. A prequel telling the story of the hero Adam, with a different approach to combat and entirely new features. It was practically its own game and did get a standalone release, but was the final result really worth it? Let's find out. Just like in my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 review, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but the game itself is a prequel. It tells of the Aegis War and the story of Torna's hero Adam, as was briefly touched upon in the main game. Anyone who has played the original game to completion knows how this one ends. That's the curse of it being a prequel, but the way the game plays with your expectations is truly interesting. The only thing I'll reveal about this is, well, the very first reveal of the game. Despite Adam being the hero and Mithra, one of the original Xenoblade Chronicles 2's protagonists, being present here, they are not the protagonists of this game. That goes to Laura and Jin, the latter of whom many players of the base game would be familiar with. Choosing to focus on Laura and Jin was a smart move on the part of Monolith Soft, as we know significantly less about these two than we do about Adam and Mithra, the latter of which gets a lot of attention in the main game. By focusing on Laura and Jin, the narrative gives us the view of this story from a slightly different angle, and the game plays with this quite well. It also helps that I find Laura and Jin significantly more interesting protagonists than I did Rex and Pyra. All the party members in this game are good. I particularly like how Aegeon has been bumped up to the main cast from his minor blade role in the base game. Laura and Jin are just so likeable together, and Laura bounced off everyone else really well. Now, the story isn't perfect. It's pretty straightforward with a few twists and turns like the original game, and that's because it's only about 1/5 the length of the original. It also doesn't pull any punches with spoilers for the main game. Many of Xenoblade Chronicles 2's twists and story reveals are preemptively revealed here as the game assumes you've played the original, and so I would recommend doing it in that order because of this. There also seems to be some plot threads that simply go nowhere or are poorly implemented, because they don't focus around the main plot of defeating the Aegis, and I think this could have been handled better. Overall though, the story is really good. It's much simpler than the original with a smaller cast, but this helped me bond with these characters more than I did everyone in the base game. So the gameplay is very similar to previous Xenoblade Chronicles games. You run around an explorable field and fight monsters who you think you can defeat. Some are unique, some come in packs, and others are in the middle of lakes and a pain to fight as you can't swim and attack at once. Most of the content here is the same as the original game, so I won't bother going over my thoughts on leveling arts, equipment, and field skills, although having fixed characters means that you will always have access to the required field skills, making them significantly less annoying in this game. Combat in this game is similar at first to the original, with 3 arts to pick from: special moves, chain attacks, and combos. However, the big change comes from the Vanguard system. As every driver has 2 blades and there are only 3 drivers in total, that means everyone can participate in battle now. The driver is always present and they have their own 3 arts, while one of the blades stands in the back and offers support attacks. However, players can swap positions and throw the driver into the back row and begin playing as the blade instead. You can also once again swap blades mid-battle, and mastering this is the new key to racking up combos. As the art gauge increases regardless of what row the character is in, continuously jumping back and forth for infinite art usage is a brilliant way to keep the flow of combat going, and it's immensely satisfying. That's the only real change to the main gameplay, and everything else follows the same style as the base game. However, there is one new feature that's returning from the original Xenoblade Chronicles on Wii: the community. In the base game, this was replaced with each region having various levels that players can raise by investing in shops and doing side quests, and these unlock more side quests. As most of Torna's game is set on, well, Torna, they instead brought back the community feature, but lacking all those elaborate flow and relationship charts. Your community can raise all the way up to level 6 by meeting named NPC and helping them with their issues, or sometimes just talking to them at the right time. It really helps to flesh out the country of Torna. However, if players think the community feature is optional and can be ignored, then prepare to be disappointed. It is required to reach certain levels of the community to advance the plot, thus making those side quests feel more like main quests. And opinion on this really depends on how you feel about side quests, most of which simply involve crafting something, going from point A to B, or defeating a monster. I personally didn't mind it, as I found most of the side quest stories to be interesting enough, like finding the gold in the desert or helping out a fledgling driver on her first mission. But if you're someone who prefers ignoring these until the end to focus on the main quest, then you can't. Outside of the community and battle changes, everything else is the same as the original base game, so if you like that, you will like this. I did, and I personally think that the changes to the battle system improve the game overall and make it more dynamic. I would rather have the next Xenoblade game be based on this formula, rather than on Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The presentation is basically identical to that of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, with just some new voice acting and music to accompany the graphics. In terms of voice acting, it is once again a mixed bag. Laura and Jin are voiced very well, however I found Adam's voice a bit distracting early on. It was the same issue I had with early Nia and Rex, where the tone of their voice just didn't seem to match with their facial animations. But just like those two, this got much better as the game went on. One criticism I do have though are the NPC. Reusing NPC models is common in a lot of games, and devs usually hope that players simply don't notice. And to be fair, in games with lots of blank NPCs in the street, you don't tend to. However, it is noticeable in this game, thanks to the community feature. As this puts a bigger focus on the NPCs, you begin to notice how similar many look, especially when multiple are part of the community. And no, just putting a hat on the innkeeper doesn't suddenly make him a separate person. This is a bit of a shame, as the first Xenoblade Chronicles and X all had community features and unique NPC for them. This is clearly an issue caused from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 having generic NPCs as well, but in that game they want a focus. The ones in Torna are, and so should have had more effort placed in their designs. It's a minor gripe overall, but still a bit immersion breaking, which is never good. Nintendo's DLC plans are on point this year, and Torna the Golden Country is the next in line for this. In fact, this is the kind of DLC I wanted for Breath of the Wild's Champions Ballad, instead of what we got, and even though I didn't fully take advantage of the full DLC Season Pass for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, this game alone makes having that worth it. I really enjoyed Torna, possibly more than the original game, and I would fully recommend this, although maybe play the original one first. Once again, I would like to thank Nintendo UK for sending us a copy of this game to review, or should I say sending us the Season Pass itself all the way back in December. Now that the game's finally out, I can finally take full advantage of it, and I hope the wait was worth it. As for everyone else, let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments below, whether you picked it up, whether you're going to now that you've heard my thoughts. Give us a like if you haven't already, and I want to thank all of our patrons, in particular our super patron, the Duke of Dorks. He is always a super person. So guys, make sure you subscribe and always remember to return to the source.